Okay, so welcome back everyone. So this is my introduction. It's a new video. So today I'm going to be looking at how you can plot a graph using Excel. So if you are working on a desktop, can I just get an idea? How many of you are working on a computer? You have one available to try this in Excel? Anyone? Okay, that's fine.
I
Because
am
it's difficult to. Okay, great. Because it's difficult to watch Teams and plot at the same time. So just watch what I'm doing and use the recording and try it yourself in Excel. It's helpful to plot because marking your pracs, I know just very few people were able to plot this successfully. Okay, so first thing you need to do is to obviously open Excel. And the first thing that you need to do or will have is the values. So first, I just want to say that these values are not anything physical. When I plot them, I probably won't get a straight line or anything. They might just be all over the place. And I'm not going to reveal what these numbers represent. Okay, so this first column, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, is just the order of the values. Or in this case, it's the person, 7 people. This first variable here, time in seconds. Last number is a mystery. No idea what these numbers could represent. I'll tell you at the end. Okay, so how you plot this graph. You first need to select your 2 columns that you want to plot. So you click and drag all the numbers you want to plot. One of the columns should be your x-axis, the other ones could be your y-axis. Doesn't matter in which order. Next, at the top toolbar, you go to data. Sorry, not data, insert. And near the middle, you'll have a section for charts. Now, a common mistake is that you click on this thing that looks like a line and it calls these things a line graph. Now, these are not actually line graphs, these are trend graphs. So the graph you actually need to use is the one with a few dots floating around, which is called the scatter plot. And there's many types of scatter plots that you get. You're using the first scatter plot like that. And instantaneously, it plots those values on a scale. But that's not the end. You need to now go back and check everything, include the headings, etc., which I'm going to do last. So first thing I want to check is that it did plot these things the right way around. So in this column, the time values, just telling you, is my independent variable. This mystery column is my dependent variable. So just want to check it plotted things in the right place. So the 22 goes with the 48. Looking at this first point, that one there looks like it's about 22, and this looks like it's about 48. So what this basically means is your first column is always going to be your x-axis, and the second column will be the y-axis. So to make life simpler, when you enter your values in Excel, always put your x-axis values first. Okay, now we need to do a bit of formatting to make sure everything is there and neaten up the scale. So we click on the top at Chart Tools. That gives you this toolbar. You click on Add Chart Element, and here you can edit all the different things on this. So for instance, for axes, the primary horizontal axis, it's colored in, which means it's there. You can take it away by literally just clicking on it, and then you don't have an x-axis, which is pointless. But you're going to click on More Axes Options, and that opens up this bar on the side where there's like tons of options. I'm just going to go through the important ones. So clicking on chart options, and the first thing I'm clicking on is this paint bucket. This option for full is if you want to change the color of your graph, which is kind of pointless. Okay, if you click on chart options, it gives you this drop-down menu. First thing you want to change is the horizontal value axis. That's the one at the bottom. And you click on this button with the bars. And this lets you change the axes options. So in axes options, the bounds is basically saying where does your graph go from and to. So your minimum is most of the time going to be 0 in physics, and the maximum, it automatically selected to be 80. But if you don't like that and you want it to be something like 200, it will change the scale for you, and then your graph is going to be half the size of the page, which is not useful. So best advice is to always leave this on auto unless it doesn't look right. That's minimum and maximum. The next thing are the units, the major and the minor. So the major unit is basically what these big blocks represent. So the major unit is 10, which means that this gap is 10, goes up in tens. The minor interval is what the little blocks would represent, which are not shown here. So how you can add the little blocks in is the next option is tick marks. So for the tick marks, the major type is going to put, it says none at the moment. If I put it inside, it will put tiny little tick marks going up into the graph, but you want it to go outside. The minor type is going to be the little lines. So if I put this outside, it gives me those tick markings there. Okay, now the only thing I want to change in this is these lines are very faint to see. So to change that, still under axes options, you click on the paint bucket, you go to line, and then for color, I would change it from gray into pure black, and that will darken it up a little. So that's how you change what the x-axis looks like. Okay, now to change the vertical axis, it's kind of the same thing. Axis options, you go to vertical axis. On the bars, I'm going to leave it from 0 to 140. I'm going to leave the major axis from go up in 20s, the minor go up in 4s. I want to put tick marks outside. Now I want to change the color to black. Wrong thing. So don't click on full. Full is the colored in thing. You're looking for line. The line color I'm changing to dark or just pure black. So that's clear to see. You can also change things like the width if you really want to. That's basically the thickness. And I wouldn't use anything else there. Okay, the next thing I want to add is still under axes options is horizontal axis major grid lines. So underneath line automatic, I want to change the color to black. And these lines here are what are the major grid lines. So now this looks like a whole series of dark lines. So to just make it a bit clearer, I'm going to reduce the width just to make it a bit lighter and thinner. That's the major grid line options. Going to do the same thing for the vertical axis, make it black, make it thin. And that's the things you have on your chart so far. Now what I also want to do is add the little lines in between. So now I go to the top left, add chart element. And I go to grid lines. So the primary major horizontal, you see if I just hover over it, that's what it represents, the lines going sideways. I want to add minor horizontal grid lines. So I click on that, should be there. Go back to the right-hand side tab, and now you'll see minor grid lines appears over there. Now the reason you can't see it is because the color is set to white. I'm going to set it to black. And they appear, but they're too dark. So I'm going to reduce the width. Now it looks the same as my major grid lines. So I'm actually just going to go back and make those thicker. So I can see the dark lines and the light lines like you can on normal graph paper. Right, then you do exactly the same thing to get the other grid lines, primary vertical, I think. Go to this right-hand side, vertical minor grid lines, sorry, vertical, horizontal minor grid lines. Change the color to black, make it a bit thinner. Then I want to go back to my major grid lines and make those thicker. And that's how you can get a nice kind of a graph. If you don't like this rectangular shape and you want to get it more square, all you need to do is drag the edge of this chart and it shrinks the whole thing, kind of, until you get something that roughly looks like squares. Okay, and that's the hard part that most people struggle with. Okay, the next thing I want to add is my axes titles. So I go to add chart element, axis titles. I want a primary horizontal and I want a primary vertical. Now to change the axis title, you can literally just type, select it and type over it, time in seconds. And now that I can see what this data looks like, which is what I expected, I'll reveal what the y-axis is. It's a certain mark, which won't have a unit really. Okay, so that adds the axes titles. Then to change the chart title, select it, and how we write the heading is line graph of y-axis variable marks versus time. And if you want to move it, you can just click it and drag it, rotate it to where you want. And it's very difficult to see, but actually this text here is gray. So to change the text color, you click on it. On the right-hand side, it opens up to title options. You want to go to text options and change the text outline text full, sorry, the text full to be a solid full, and change the color from that very dark gray into pure black. That darkens it up a little. Or if you want to do fun things and make it red or something, it's okay. Just to make these things a bit darker. And you can do that to any of the text if your graph appears a bit light. Okay, next I want to change is what these points look like. We don't plot these thick circles. So you click on one point and it selects all of them and it changes this right-hand side tab into series options. You click on the paint bucket. Now you never want to put a line on it because it will do something like that. You want to click on the marker options. And you can put none if you don't want to see anything. Built-in options. And then from this drop-down menu, you can select what symbol you want to use. I'm going to use this X. You can also change the size, how big you want these things to be. Under full, you can change the color you want it to be. I'm going to make it red just so, sorry, not full. Full colors it in. You don't want full. You're looking for, I think it's this one. Yeah, it's border. So border, solid line, and change the color so that you can see what you want to. Okay, so that's just plotting the points. All right, then the last thing that I can do on this is how to automatically plot a line of best fits. This is probably the most advanced function. So you click on one point to select all of them. Top left, add chart element. And the line of best fit is called a trend line. So at the moment it's on none. If I want a line of best fits, I click on linear and it draws a straight line. Now we don't look at the others, but you can do something called an exponential fit, which is slightly curved, a linear forecast, which is kind of similar, or a moving average, which doesn't work out here. So I'm clicking on linear. Now to change more things on the trend line, I click on it, and on the right-hand side tab, it opens up trend line options, where now I could also make it exponential if I want, linear, logarithmic, polynomial, power. Those are more advanced things that we don't use in school. You can also give it a trend line name if you want to. Now this forecast thing, forward and backward, is something you can use if you want to extend the line. So at the moment it's 0. If I just try and make it 1, type it in and then click away, doesn't change anything. Okay, I made it 20, and what that did is it extended the line forward, going that way. Now I want it to go the other way. So I wanted to go backwards. Now 20 periods means 20 units on the time axis. So type it in, click away, and it extends the line. If you wanted to exactly touch that axis, you kind of have to guesstimate. Oh, that's a bit too much. Notice as you change things, it automatically adjusts your graph. Okay, that looks about fine. Okay, so in trendline options, this thing with the bars is where you can change the functions of this. Also cool about it is you can set the intercept. So if you want to force the line of best fit to go through the origin, you can set the intercept to be 0. I'm not going to do it here. And maybe the nice mathematical thing is you can display the equation directly on the charts, and it automatically calculates the gradient, the y-intercept, and it writes the equation for you. So you can see how this makes life a lot simpler. Now, if you do a lot of statistics, you can display something called the R-squared value. That's the regression constant, which basically tells you how accurate the line of best fit is. So 0.82 means that this is 82-ish%, 83% actually, accurate to a line of best fit. If your R-squared value is 1, that's when all the points fit perfectly on the line. So we don't use it at school unless you do AP Maths or extra statistics. That helps you to plot a straight line and tell how good your line of best fit is. So I'm not going to put those things on now. Next, I want to change the formatting, the color. So I click on the paint bucket. I want a solid line. Color, let's make it green. The width, just playing around and seeing what's reasonable. And then to change the dotted line, you're looking for the dash type. And you can choose what type of line you want. Obviously, we usually want a solid line. Now that's a bit thick. That seems okay. Okay, so that in a nutshell is how you plot these line graphs on Excel. There's not much more I can add or nothing else that you need to add in school. Are there any questions so far?
No, sir.
Okay. Great.